This is the Self-Taught or Not podcast with
Dylan Israel
and Eric Hanchett, where we teach you the do's and don'ts of software development from two software development professionals, one self-taught and one not. Hey, everybody. So today we are talking about the 5 myths junior developers have on success. So this actually probably relates just more to just junior developers, but developers in general. But these are 5 things that I keep hearing over and over again. They're almost, a lot of people think these are like hard rules to be successful, maybe not even just for developers, for anybody in general. And I just kind of want to talk about these topics, talk about these kind of almost what some people consider best practices, and kind of push a little bit, try to understand it a little bit more, and then kind of reveal what I think are not hard truths, that that people who are spouting these things are lying to you. Maybe not intentionally, but they are telling you something that you shouldn't believe, because a lot of these things, they are almost like idioms that you would put on a bumper sticker or put in a Twitter profile, or you know that trend that people are doing nowadays in their houses where they put in like little plaques everywhere that have all these little quotes and sayings. These are the things that I hear a lot in the tech industry, and especially for junior developers, that I don't think are real. What do you think, Dylan? And also, as always, we have Dylan here. We should do more introductions like that, but we don't.
Where we introduce ourselves. And then, as always, my co-host, I'll be the Vanna White of this episode. It's funny, man, is a lot of people are probably, I mean, I know it's Wheel of Fortune's still on, but like I feel like that's more of like that might be a generational joke. Some of the younger audience may not. They're like, Vanna who? Like, I don't know. but yeah, so I digress. This is one of those items you see all the time on like Facebook or Instagram. 5 traits of successful people, or the 5 things the super wealthy do every day. And I would even venture to say that like most of these things aren't necessarily inherently bad. I think where I have a lot of the issue with some of these items is that they're painted as like always is like 0 or 100, like it's just black and white, when reality is that everyone works in different ways, and you sort of have to look at what works for you versus what works for somebody else. And even when I give advice on here, or I give advice on the YouTube channel or whatnot, a lot of it is just from my personal past, and like, this is what worked for me. It might work for you, but I'm definitely biased because it worked for me, right?
Right. There's shades of gray in everything we do, and that is certainly true in the tech world and the developer world that we are all in. So let's go ahead.
I was going to say shades of gray in everything except infidelity, Eric. And don't you forget that. All right?
Yes, for sure. All right. So let's just jump into it. I have, as the name of this episode suggests, we have 5 things. So I'm going to just throw this out here. First, number 1. This is something I hear all the time. It's given as advice to junior developers, maybe just people in general. Like, successful people do X, or you need to do Y to be successful. And the reason I kind of don't like this idiom is it kind of paints, just as we said earlier, a black and white picture of how people can be successful. And there is actually inherent problems with this. So you might see, and I just saw this on Twitter the other day, it's like highly successful people get up at 6 a.m. every day. And it's nice to feel like, oh, maybe if I got up at 6 a.m. every day, I can be highly successful. But it's really, it's hard to connect the dots back to where you are today to find out how you were successful. And it's hard to repeat that for other people. So maybe you were successful because you got up at 6 a.m. and you worked your butt off to accomplish X, Y, and Z, or maybe you got up 6 a.m. to grind leak code to get that first job, or you're going on free code camp and watching some of the best YouTube channels ever, me and Dylan's, to learn how to be a better programmer and developer. But see, that was a little plug for our YouTube channels. You can go to eric.video, by the way. Uh, but there's definitely some survivorship bias in that, and meaning that the people that succeed are the ones that are giving you this advice, but everyone else that got up at 6 a.m. who didn't succeed are not giving this advice. And there might be a 10-to-1 ratio. Like there's this one person that did this XYZ thing. They got up 6 a.m., they work 20-hour days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can happen to you. And to make one more point, I'll let Dylan jump in here. Like I would say both of our stories, even though it worked for us, you can maybe try exactly what Dylan did or what I did, and you won't come up with the same results. It just really depends on how you handle the perspective you have, the time and place and period of time in your life to see if some of these tactics will work or not.
Yeah, and some things to keep in mind is that like I actually believe that survivorship bias is somewhat okay as long as it's truthful. Like, hey, I think this is gonna work. This worked for me and it's worked for other people and whatnot. But you have to evaluate if it's gonna work for yourself. But also, we live in such a day and age that like a lot of people are full of shit, right? We have all these online gurus and like developers even in just our space that are like that people who are trying to sell you mentoring for $5,000 for a month and crazy shit like that, or hey, I'll make you a dev in 3 weeks, sort of stuff. And like, so when someone tells you like, hey, do this, do that, oftentimes be weary and sort of think, what do I know about this person and what value can they bring, and did they actually go this route? But also, not everyone's path is going to be the same. You might have the same goal, but it's okay to try a path that someone says, "Hey, do I did X and maybe it'll work for you." But if X doesn't work, don't keep trying to make it work. Go down Y and Z and everything else as you go and figure out what it is that's going to work for you. And I talked about this before about how like I think people are afraid to quit things. And when someone tells you this is the one path to be successful, and if you try it, you're just going to keep going even if it doesn't work for you. Don't be afraid to try things, drop it, and then try something else to maybe find your own path to success, and so that you could have your own survivorship bias of what works for you.
I like that. Yeah, if there's no one right way a lot of times to do things, there's probably some not even best practices, but some guidelines, some guide rails that you can take to achieve your goals, but it's not necessarily exactly like how I achieved my goals or someone else achieved your goals. And I want to touch on a point Dylan just mentioned about online gurus. Fortunately, in the day of age that we're in, and we as humans, I think we're really susceptible to this kind of crazy advertising that you see where you look at someone who said they got a developer job in 3 months, or that they can teach you, XYZ in 1 week, and you can, get that job of your dreams or something like that. And just realize that it's a lot about hard work, about the time you put in. Like I have a program called View 360 that I in this kind of, it's almost like a boot camp for Vue.js. It's over 6 weeks. We have weekly call-ins. We have weekly assignments that you can complete. I try to cover everything in the Vue ecosystem. But one of the things I put on my sales page, I'm trying to sell this course, and is that, I want to get you job ready. Now, job ready doesn't guarantee you that you're going to get the job. But I really think that after you take my course for 6 weeks, that you're going to be at a point where if you went to an interview for a job that was using Vue.js, that you would be able to talk about it intelligently. You could talk about common patterns that they are probably using in production, and that you could do the job and be job ready. That's what I mean by that when I say job ready. But as someone that creates courses, I understand that it's really easy to get into that mode where you're kind of guaranteeing things that are impossible. And so it's a little bit of a give and take between that, and you got to be able to research it, because I know a lot of students have taken my course, and it's not a cheap course. They went and like looked at my YouTube videos that I've done over like 3 or 4 years of YouTube videos. They saw the book that I wrote with a Vue.js core team member. They saw that I did interviews with hundreds of Vue team members. So they know that I have the pedigree to be able to teach these topics. On the other hand, if you look at Joe Schmo that says you can be a millionaire in 2 weeks, I mean, how are they becoming a millionaire? Are they becoming Are they a millionaire because they sold a $9.99 product to 1,000 people, and is that how they became a millionaire, or is it because they actually worked and created a real business at some point? So that's a quick tangent on the side, but just keep in mind, just like Dylan said, look behind the curtain a little bit and see who is kind of guaranteeing these results for you. Let's kind of shift topics here for a second. I on this topic of successful people, success is really defined by you. So people have different levels of success, of what they think success is, and they may judge the success for themselves different than they judge other people's success. Because maybe my success is to be happy and to have enough money for me and my family, and to have summers and take nice large trips on these in the summers with my families. And your success, but when I judge other people, I can't really determine what their successful is. I don't know how happy they are, so maybe I judge them on how much money they make. So just keep in mind, when you hear about people talking about success, what does success mean for you, and what do you think about it? I mean, what do you think about this, Dylan? What do you think about this defining success?
Yeah, and I think this is important because I've been told that I'm a little bit judgy at times, and part of it is me maybe misinterpreting what other people value and seeing people maybe make choices that I wouldn't make. And I think part of life is accepting the fact that we're all different, and also looking inward and saying that what you value may be different from what somebody else does. So, like in my case of success, it's about money and career progression as a developer and side projects and having the freedom to travel and work a 40-hour week at my job. But other people, like their idea of success could have nothing to do with that. Like I know my girlfriend, all she wants in life. I shouldn't say this. She might get upset I share this. But all she wants is she wants to have a family. She wants to have more kids. Like we're gonna have a farm if this all works out. Like ridiculous amounts of kids, as far as I'm concerned. On a side tangent, I was sharing that with my mother, and I forgot that my mother is one of 7. And so she's like, "That's a fantastic idea." I was like, "Mom, this isn't the 1960s anymore. All right, no one's having 5-6 person families." But yeah, everyone's idea of success is different, right? And what you should really try and define is not worry about other people's ideas of success, but clearly define what yours is, not based on what other people's are. And the way that I do that is I say, well, what is it that I want at the end of the day? And then how can once I figure that out, which might take you a day or two, write down some things, figure it out, rate them, just like anything else, be very logical about it, and then figure out how you can be successful in certain aspects to achieve that end goal. And that is your definition of success and how you're going to get there.
I like that, writing it down. I think that kind of goes to like how you make goals, things like that. And also success, I think, varies between like your professional life, your personal life, your different pieces of your life with your friends, things like that. Like my goals for being successful in my family life is a lot different than my professional life. I mean, they have some crossover, but like you, I want to do well at work. I want to get raises and promotions. I want to build, a nice, fun time. I still want to teach people and have a little side income, things like that. That's part of my being successful. But I also, my personal life, my success is, happy wife, happy life. I think that's part of the success I would think that would make me happy too. Let's move on from there. That's definitely a deep topic that we could spend a lot of time on. I mean, it's almost going a little too deep for this podcast. So the second thing, and I'm glad I brought it up though, because I think it's important to touch on it. The second myth on that I hear all the time online is this idea that to be successful or to make it ahead, you need to focus on being yourself, and that is the end all of be all of what you need in life. And so you kind of hear this term a lot. It's like, just be yourself. You're going to go into that job interview, just be yourself. You'll be fine. You want to become a developer? Well, first thing you need to do is be yourself. Or you're starting a YouTube channel. Well, you just got to be yourself. But I really think that is counterproductive advice. And I understand people who say it are in a good place and they don't mean it maliciously or anything. But first, you have to define who you are. We all are different beings in this world, and we all have different thoughts about ourselves. And this kind of goes into psychology a little bit. And I'm not a psychologist. If you're listening along and you are, you can tweet me at EricCH and tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I think that we all have, like in ourself, we picture ourselves a certain way. Like I would say, I picture myself as a professional software developer, YouTuber, father, husband. That's who I picture myself. But when you're trying to achieve a goal of some kind, you're trying to become a developer for the first time, you kind of need to shift who you think of yourself as. So rather than being yourself, maybe shift your mindset to being, I am a developer. And this is what developers do. So it doesn't mean you throw away the core personality. There's certain traits that you have that you'll never get rid of. Like some people are a little bit more cleanly, some people are a little more dirty, some people have certain traits that are innate to themselves, or certain skills. You can't change those, but you can definitely change how you think of yourself, and you can change how you treat other people and your daily routines that you put in place. And so, if you're trying to just be yourself, that may not be the best option. What happens if yourself is someone that's like me? I'm naturally introverted. I have problems sometimes talking to other people. I get nervous in big crowds and situations. I get energy when I'm at home. So if I kind of said I always want to be myself, then I think it would be difficult for me to start a podcast with Dylan, to be on YouTube in front of thousands of people and explain programming topics, or to even speak up at work when I'm in an all hands meeting and I want to ask a question. That would be really difficult if I just kind of kept to that core belief of I'm really nervous being around other people. So you kind of have to break out of that mold and be you just have to try a little bit harder. And being yourself, I like this quote, being yourself you might not have the courage to get in front of the camera or put yourself out there. A lot of us tend to be lazy too. I'm lazy too. If I didn't want to do anything, it's the most comfortable part of being yourself is just sitting on that couch or listening to that podcast or not doing anything. You just kind of have to break out of the mold. And then one last tip is to try to accentuate what makes you different. Focus on that. But just there's a couple of ideas in my head. What do you think, Dylan? I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, I think it's shitty advice. So I think that's some shit your mother would tell you of like, don't worry, baby. All the girls like you. You're a very handsome man, Dylan. Like, it's just lazy advice that doesn't really have any practical application. And there is some truth to it. Like, to go through life, you have to and be happy. You don't want to necessarily feel like an imposter, right? And you don't want to fake it till you make it. But there is an objective of essentially transforming who you are every couple years of who you want to be, right? I think Matthew McConaughey said something along the lines of like his goal or his hero is his self 5-10 years from now, because that's the man he wants to be. And I think this idea of being yourself means you're comfortable. Comfort is one step closer to complacency. And if you're not challenging yourself and you're not growing, then you're comfortable. If you're uncomfortable, oftentimes it means that you're trying to be a better version of yourself and there's some growing pains associated with it. So although you should be comfortable with who you are, you should be slightly uncomfortable about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And if you are, you're typically going in the right direction. So I think it's kind of lazy advice, and I don't think it's very actionable. It's basically just keep doing what you're doing and hope it works out. And I don't like that.
I agree. And there's this feeling that we don't want to be fake. Like everybody's afraid that you don't want to be a fake personality, and we call out people all the time. Well, that guy's fake, or that guy's just faking, or that YouTuber, that's not how that person really is. It's just show. And so we get this into our heads that, oh my goodness, I can't be a developer. I'll be just faking it. All I'm good at is is, bagging groceries or, taking orders at Starbucks, or, I mean, by the way, if you're working at Starbucks or one of these companies, I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying you got to break out of that mold of like, this is just who I am. I can't do anything more. I just got to be myself to, push yourself to being better, and don't care about other people saying you're being fake or that's not who you are. I mean, only you can define who you are. All
Those
right,
are
let's move
just the
on.
haters,
The
man.
hater,
That's all it is.
the hater
The
gators,
hate, the hater gators. That's Florida haters right there.
Florida haters. Uh, okay, number 3. This is a strategy I hear a lot, and now the last 3 here are a little bit more kind of creator. These are for people who maybe are junior devs, but they're also they listen to our podcast and they hear that, hey, you should probably create your own blog or create your own podcast or a YouTube channel. And they're trying to break out of just being the 9-to-5 developer. So a lot of times I hear when we give advice to people to start breaking out of what they're doing, and they start putting themselves online and they start creating blogs or YouTube articles or you know podcasts or whatever, they say you need to be useful. Like, this is the strategy I hear over and over again: be useful. It's the helpful strategy. So it's the strategy is rooted that if you build it, they will come. So if you want to start, raising your personal brand, you want to start helping the community, all you need to do is, create a dev.to account and write about your experiences with learning Angular or with React, or a technique that you found in React, or how you did with forms. And as long as it's helpful and useful, people will start following you, and you'll start building this online personal brand, and essentially that you'll be taken care of, and eventually people will be talking to you to ask you to come to conferences, and you're going to get job interviews, and all your ambitions in your career are going to be solved. And I'm being a little bit facetious here. I'm being a little exaggeration. I'm making exaggerating this a little bit, but it's kind of the common advice I see out there. But if you take a step back and think of like what kind of execution and what kind of strategy that I'm going to take with the content that I create online, then you can be much more successful. So the be useful strategy of just creating content and putting it out there just relies on the fact that maybe you'll get lucky and someone bigger will promote your stuff. They'll either retweet you, or dev.to you'll get upvoted to the top of it, or you'll be in the top of Hacker News, and that somehow that will propel you into whatever goal you have of building your online audience. That kind of relies on that. And it also relies on you just having to do this over and over and over again and hoping you're going to get that lucky break. But if you're trying to come up with a better strategy, like a better strategy of that would be like, creating good content is the starting point, but it's not everything. You need to be more strategic. You need to think about marketing. You need to think about promotion of what you're doing. So instead of creating a blog article and just posting it up on your dev.to account, maybe you create that blog on your own personal website. So that way it gets the SEO, which is search engine optimization, from Google. So people start, looking and finding your stuff on your own website. And then you can start reposting that on Medium and dev.to, or even Free Code Camp. And a lot of those services allow you to have links back to your original article. So that way you still get kind of the SEO purposes back to your article. Maybe you can think of people who might find those articles interesting, like newsletters, and start submitting it to them because they probably never heard of you and they probably won't find your articles. Maybe you can ask some people to retweet your things. Or maybe you take that article that you wrote on blog and then you create a podcast of it, or a YouTube channel of it, and then you post it to Facebook groups. But you kind of have to have this strategy to build an online audience, to really use this be useful, helpful strategy to make sense.
Yeah, and I think this sort of falls into the category of sort of truthful but kind of lazy advice again, where you're like, yeah, you have to solve a problem and you have to be helpful, and that's true. But you also have to work smart and hard, not just hard. And if you're not careful when you're like, if all you focus on is being useful and you're not intelligently figuring out how to partner up, how to maybe work with others, how to promote whatever it is that you're trying to be successful at in development, especially as a aspiring junior developer, then you're going to be. It doesn't matter, how helpful you are. And if you're related back to the workplace, I've done quite a bit of mentoring where a lot of people are working very, very hard to get promoted in their organizations, and they just don't, because hey, some things are out of your control. While maybe the smart money, or in terms of going from junior to mid or junior to senior, or just junior to better paid junior, it's just going and leaving and looking for a different organization. And that's does there are circumstances where it doesn't matter how hard you work, that sometimes you just have to make that smart decision, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that like in a work setting. You definitely see where people who are really great developers, they work really hard, but they don't get the recognition that they need. And sometimes it's just the organization that you're in, to Dylan's point. Sometimes they need to just speak up more often. Like if they were the ones that maybe turned their camera on during Zoom calls and the leadership saw their faces, or if they spoke up more often in meetings, or they had one-on-ones with their bosses and they told them, flat out, hey, I'd like to be promoted, I want to do this, what's the path forward. Maybe those people could get those raises, and maybe those people could kind of climb the ladder in their corporate jobs. But since they're this idea that this kind of this magical meritocracy works out there, that all you need to do is create good work and you'll be recognized, is fortunately not real.
Yeah, I mean,
one strategy. Go ahead.
I was going to say, sometime in that situation, like, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're literally waiting for someone to retire or die. Like, that's just the reality. And so you have to take that approach with, is hard work going to get you there? Sometimes, but you have to sort of be realistic as well.
I've been in organizations like that. I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, who's the last person in my group that has been promoted, other than like from engineer 2 to engineer 3? Has anybody in this group ever been promoted to a manager or a team lead? And then you look around and no one has. And you're like, what's the chances of me to being upgraded, or to be upgraded? I mean, promoted. And you're like, that's probably not going to be useful. This guy's been doing this for 20 years in this one job, and he doesn't look like he's retiring anytime soon. And he's the only guy that we need. So, yeah, that's not very helpful. So yeah, so just keep in mind that be useful, helpful strategy online. If you hear people spouting this, just keep in mind that it's better to be strategic. And also, one way that I'll give you a little tip: being useful, helpful strategy, it could be just creating a ton of content. Like that's could be one good strategy. Instead of spending like, a week on one blog article that you're releasing, one or two a month, maybe you create 30 blogs in a month and one really amazing blog every other month. Maybe that's a strategy. But just got to keep in mind that there's different strategies to make it, and it really helps speed things up too. So let's talk about everything is a zero-sum game. I think this is something I've even struggled with at times, and I've been in workplaces where it's very competitive. And the idea is that, and unfortunately, some companies, it's like this: they stack rank people, and that means that no matter what you do, somebody above you is going to rank you either below or above someone else. And when raises come out and when promotions come out, the people that are stack ranked higher than you will end up with the higher percentage of the raise, and they will be more often vaulted above you. So that is one example of where, if you're not getting something, if basically you are getting less, it is a zero-sum game. And so that's a bad organization that would do that, but it's obviously it's somewhat common in some places, especially these larger businesses. But in general, life isn't a zero-sum game. So if someone is doing better than you and I've seen this before, you're like on Twitter and you see someone that kind of looks looks like they're in the same place in your career as you, that they're just as smart as you, but they're getting like 6-figure offers from some company. They're releasing new products faster than you. It's sometimes in some of us, and like I said, I've struggled with this. You sometimes think like, wow, why are they doing so well and I'm not? And you think like, I need to tear that person down, or I need to think like I got to bring that person down because I'm not doing as well. And you kind of get this thing in your head where if they're doing great, you can't do great. Like they're taking away from you somehow. But the reality is like someone else's success or gains has no effect on your success and gains. And if you get into that negative mindset where you look at everyone else that's doing better than you, and you figure that you are being hurt because they're doing better, then that's a problem. And I've said this, I think we've said this in like 10 different podcasts now, but you got to get, it's better to get better than get better. And I think we've kind of covered this a few times in some of the podcasts, but life isn't a zero-sum game. You're not going to be worse off because someone did better.
Yeah, and I think, the idea that as you sort of all work together, everyone sort of benefits. I'm forgetting. I'm so bad with quotes. It's like, as the tide rises, so does everyone else, or some shit like that. But like that's part of it. Is like, it's there's been so many examples. I mean, open source itself is a example of this. Of, oh yes, the open source community of, oh hey, we're building something, we're giving it away for free, and people are going to use it and benefit from it, and other people are going to do the same. And like, some of our coolest technologies like Angular, React, Vue, all sort of open source, use it as you please. And there's the idea that it's everyone against everyone else and there's like not enough pie to go around. I don't think it's a really honest reality of the world. I mean, there are circumstances where that's true, but I think generally speaking, the more people work together, or maybe just work on themselves instead of trying to like take someone out in the process, the more successful they'll be long term.
Maybe corollary to that is to also don't compare yourself to others, because for some people it's debilitating, and some people it's motivating. Some people that look at other people that are doing better and want to work harder, and some people look at other people that are doing better and just kind of tear themselves down. And they want to tear that other person down and makes them feel like crap. But life is also one of the things. It's like a long con. Like, you may be doing great today, you may be doing worse tomorrow. They may be doing great today, they may be doing worse tomorrow. And you don't really know, too. I mean, we live in a world where we always show the best of ourselves online, or the best of ourselves when we're kind of meeting up, when we're, I don't know, at a party or something. You don't really know, like, is that person truly happy? Is that person working 90-hour weeks and it's miserable? I mean, they look really happy. Is their marriage falling apart? I mean, you can't, it's really hard to judge people, even really successful people like Elon Musk, or what we might consider successful, or Bill Gates. Like, do you really know? Are they really happy? Are they really successful? Should I be comparing myself to them? Okay, so let's move on to step 5. The last myth I want to say for junior developers is that we have this idea that there is some goal, like there's some place where we've made it. And I think this is a common myth, like, oh, if I only get that first developer job, then I'm set for life. Or if I only make this one promotion, then I'm set for life. Or if I only make, 100, if I finally make 6 figures, like, I am going to hit this pinnacle where, I'll be truly happy. But the thing is that we have this thing called the hedonic treadmill, where when we reach this rung in life that we think we needed, like we needed the 6-figure salary, or we needed this first developer job, we quickly adapt to it, and the joy that we received from that place that we got to dissipates after a while. It may take a few months, could take a year or two, but eventually this will be our new normal, and the joy that you got from receiving to getting to that point will go away. And so there's always another challenge. There's always another thing you need to do. And at some point in your life, you just have to be happy of what you have and what you've done, and where you're at. And you just gotta realize that when you reach these goals that you'll probably be happy for a while and then you won't, but eventually at some point you just got to be happy where you're at.
Yeah, and I personally think this is okay. I think you set goals, immediate goals. You like everyone has hopefully everyone has a 1-year goal, a 5-year, a 10-year, or something like that, and you look at this more as milestones that you hit along with the main goal to be what we talked about, which was your definition of success and how you're going to be happy long term. And like back when I was delivering pizzas and I was studying code, my made it was the junior dev job, right? And then I got the junior dev job, and then it was like the big pay increase, and it was the senior title, and right now it's dating, I guess. But career wise, it's it's one of those items where there's always going to be a moving pull. It's going to be okay to be happy where you're at, but there's also nothing wrong with wanting to challenge yourself to maybe accomplish your ultimate definition of success, but you should appreciate what you got.
So just like Ferris Bueller said, sometimes you just got to stop and look around every now and then, or you'll miss it. All right, so that is the end of this episode. Do you have anything to add at the end here, Dylan? Any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
Oh, I always have words of wisdom, but I'll leave it till the next episode.
Later, guys.
Bye, everybody. Hey, guys, thanks for watching. If you want to find more about what I'm up to, go to dylanisrael.com.
And if you want to know what I'm up to, you can check out my website at eric.video. If you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And if you do, you might even be featured on our next episode. Don't forget to check out the website at selftaughtornot.com. From there, you can sign up for a mailing list where we give away free courses and a bunch of cool stuff. And we'll also let you know when the next episode comes out. And finally, if you didn't know, we have a Facebook group. It's called Code, Tech, and Caffeine. We have over 10,000 members, and you can find the link at selftaughtornot.com. So come join us. We have tons of developers willing to help you guys, mentor you guys. Check it out. Just make sure you go to selftaughtornot.com and check out the Code, Tech, and Caffeine link. Thanks, and take care.